I was cleaning out the attic one rainy afternoon when I stumbled upon an old, dusty box labeled Keepsakes. The box seemed innocuous enough, but as I sifted through its contents, my hand brushed against a faded envelope tucked beneath baby photos and hospital bracelets. Curious, I opened it and found a letter addressed to my parents from a hospital I'd never heard of. My pulse quickened as I read the contents, my world tilting on its axis. The letter detailed an incident at the hospital on the night of my birth. Babies had been switched. My name and birth date were listed alongside another unfamiliar name. I couldn't comprehend what I was reading. It felt surreal, like a plot twist in a novel. How could this be real? I dropped the letter as if it had burned me, my mind racing with questions and fears. Without thinking, I ran downstairs, clutching the letter, and confronted my parents. They were sitting in the living room, sipping tea and watching TV. I blurted out what I had found, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. Their faces turned pale, eyes wide with shock. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling up instantly, while my father's expression shifted from disbelief to resignation. They admitted they had known for years, but were too scared to tell me. They had received the letter shortly after my birth, but had decided to raise me as their own, afraid of losing the baby they had grown to love. Their voices quivered with remorse as they explained, but I felt a storm of emotions crashing within me: betrayal, confusion, and a deep, aching sadness. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Who were my biological parents? Where was the other child? I asked for every detail they could remember, and they handed me another envelope with contact information for the other family. My hands shook as I took it, the weight of the truth pressing heavily on my chest. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my life, questioning its authenticity. Were my memories truly mine? Did I really belong in this family? The letter had ignited a burning need for the truth, and I knew I had to follow this path, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, with resolve, I dialed the number on the contact sheet. A woman's voice answered, and I hesitated, unsure of what to say. Finally, I introduced myself and explained my situation. There was a long pause on the other end, and then she began to cry. She had always wondered about her biological child, she confessed, and had tried to find me years ago, but gave up when nothing turned up. We arranged to meet, the anticipation and anxiety building within me. As I hung up the phone, I glanced at my parents, who watched me with hopeful yet fearful eyes. I realized that this journey would not only change my life, but also challenge everything I had ever known about family, love, and identity. The discovery was just the beginning. The day of the meeting arrived faster than I anticipated. My heart pounded as I drove to the cafe where we had agreed to meet. The city seemed unusually vibrant that day, as if mocking the turmoil within me. I parked my car and sat for a moment, taking deep breaths to steady my nerves. With each step towards the entrance, my mind raced with possibilities and fears. Inside, I spotted a woman who looked remarkably like me. She was sitting at a corner table, nervously twisting a napkin in her hands. When she saw me, her eyes widened and she stood up, almost knocking over her coffee. We stared at each other for a few seconds, the resemblance undeniable. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," she replied, her voice cracking with emotion. We sat down, awkward at first, fumbling through small talk. Then, she pulled out a photo album, and as we flipped through the pages, the ice began to melt. There were pictures of her family, my biological family, at birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. The woman pointed out people and told stories, her voice filled with warmth and nostalgia. As we talked, a strange mix of emotions surged within me. Sadness for the years lost, joy at finding my biological family, and guilt for feeling like I was betraying the parents who raised me. She noticed my turmoil and reached across the table to hold my hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "We have time to make new memories." Her kindness was a balm to my frayed nerves. We decided to meet again, and she invited me to a family gathering that weekend. I agreed, eager yet apprehensive about this new chapter in my life. Back home, my parents were anxious to hear about the meeting. I assured them it went well, but I could see the fear in their eyes, the fear of losing me. I hugged them tightly, promising them that no matter what happened, they were still my family. The weekend arrived, and I found myself standing in front of a large, welcoming house. My biological family greeted me with open arms, their warmth easing some of my anxiety. We spent the day sharing stories, laughing, and getting to know each other. I learned about my heritage, my relatives, and the quirks that seemed eerily familiar. One moment stood out, a heart-to-heart with my biological mother. We sat on the porch, away from the noise of the gathering. She spoke of the day she found out about the switch, the endless search, and the heartbreak of not knowing where I was. Her pain mirrored the confusion and anger I felt. We cried together, and in that moment, A new bond began to form. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Balancing time between my two families was challenging. I felt torn, as if I belonged to two worlds. Yet, this journey of self-discovery brought a sense of completeness I hadn't known I was missing. My parents, who raised me, gradually opened up to my biological family, and slowly two fragmented parts of my life began to merge. Through this process, I discovered more about myself than I ever imagined. I learned about resilience, the complexity of identity, and the boundless capacity of the human heart to love. This journey was painful and confusing, but it was also profoundly rewarding. Each day brought new challenges and revelations, weaving a complex tapestry of who I was and who I was becoming. As weeks turned into months, my life settled into a new rhythm. I spent time with both families, learning to navigate the delicate balance of my dual existence. There were moments of tension and awkwardness, but also many instances of joy and connection. Both sets of parents were doing their best to support me, even as they grappled with their own emotions. One evening, I organized a dinner with both families. It was a bold move, but I felt it was time to bring everyone together. The atmosphere was tense at first, polite but guarded. Gradually, the conversation flowed more freely. Anecdotes were shared, and laughter broke the ice. By the end of the night, there was a palpable sense of relief and a tentative bond forming between the two families. During this time, I also explored my own identity. I began seeing a therapist who helped me process the overwhelming emotions and confusion. Through our sessions, I came to understand that my identity was not solely defined by my biology or my upbringing, but by my experiences, values, and choices. This realization was liberating, giving me the strength to embrace my unique story. One pivotal moment came when my biological father, a quiet man who had often seemed reserved, shared his thoughts with me during a walk in the park. He expressed his deep regret for the lost years, but also his immense gratitude for the chance to know me now. His sincerity touched me deeply, helping me to forgive the circumstances that had kept us apart. My parents, the ones who raised me, also went through their own journey of acceptance. They started attending family therapy sessions, which helped them confront their fears and guilt. Watching them open up and grow was incredibly moving. It reaffirmed that their love for me was unwavering, and it gave me the courage to fully integrate my two worlds. One sunny afternoon, as I sat in my apartment reflecting on the past year, I realized how much I had grown. The initial shock and pain had given way to understanding and acceptance. I felt a profound sense of peace and wholeness. My life had changed irrevocably, but in many ways it had become richer and more meaningful. I decided to take a trip, a solo journey to a place I had always wanted to visit. It was a symbolic act, a way to reclaim my sense of self and independence. As I stood on a mountaintop, gazing at the breathtaking view, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had been given the rare opportunity to rebuild my identity, to forge new relationships, and to discover the depths of my own resilience. Returning home, I felt ready to embrace the future. I had two families who loved me, and a deeper understanding of myself. I realized that my story, though unconventional, was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It was a story of love, loss, and ultimately, reconciliation. As I moved forward, I carried with me the lessons learned from both sides of my family. I knew there would still be challenges, but I also knew that I had the strength to face them. My journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace with who I was and where I came from. This new beginning was not just about finding out who I was at birth, but about discovering who I had become and who I wanted to be.